It's easy for me because when I enjoy my wins, all I do is I'll be sitting on the beach and just something, and that is it. And when I was there, new, fresh meat, every gym I'd walk into, I kid you not, they were lining up to spar me. And you hear these stories, but they were actually lining up to spar me. And I don't pray for a win because I feel like, it might sound silly, but I feel like it's an unfair advantage. I remember I had a hard 3 weeks, and this was the first week after sparring. Come back in my room, I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? Hopefully come February 22nd, that voice in my head back then would be the reason I won a world title.
Welcome to the Ring Podcast, everybody, and welcome to today's guest, middleweight contender Hamzah Sheeraz. Hamza, good to see you as always. Let's start off with a bit of a chat about the ring, because it's a name in boxing that has endured down the decades. Yeah. It was founded in 1922, but fighters of your generation are just as aware of it, I think, as boxers have ever been. It's got that kind of resonance to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. And when you talk about the Ring magazine, you're talking boxing history, you're talking boxing greats, boxing legends, and nowadays it was kind of all about the Ring magazine belt, but now His Excellency's brought back the actual magazine itself, and yeah, man, it's a good. We're in a good space.
I think bringing back the physical copy is a really good thing, because it's easy now, isn't it, to think that everybody wants to do everything kind of online or virtually almost, but having a physical thing in your hand, I'm a fan.
Yeah,
you know, it's good to have the actual magazine and be able to read it. It's stick it in your kit bag, whatever it is. There's something about it.
Yeah, I said it before, and I'll say it again. Ever since His Excellency come into boxing, he's bringing back that old school kind of boxing era of the best fighting the best, and now having a hand copy magazine as well. So in all aspects of the sport, in all aspects in all areas, he's kind of bringing it back old school, making boxing what it once was, but with a modern twist to it.
Have you had a call from the Ring? Have you featured in it yet?
Not yet. But hopefully soon. Hopefully, listen, come February 22nd, I become a world champion, and then we'll go from there.
As you say, you're almost there now. You're on the precipice. It's close. So just take us back to the old days. Take us back to the start, because people are always really interested in how people started. I mean, why did you even go to the gym in the first place?
Boxing, it was in my family since I was born. My uncle was a fighter, and he was the one who first took me to a gym. And ever since, you hear that cliche story, ever since I walked into a gym, never looked back, and here I am today. But that's exactly what it was. As soon as I walked into the gym, it was kind of a form of discipline, a form of something to do for myself when I was younger as well. And then as I got older, I kind of connected and resonated more and more with boxing in terms of it keeping me on the straight path. When I had options to do otherwise, when I was kind of alone as well, I had boxing always to fall back on. And yeah, once I started to develop a love for it, it was almost like, I want to fight for these world titles one day, and putting myself back in the shoes of that 8, 9, 10-year-old Hamzah Sheeraz, did I think I'd be fighting for world titles and whatnot? Now the answer is no, not really. It was just a dream then, and I've always looked at myself as an overachiever, I always have done. And so whatever kind of environment, whatever fights or situation I'm in now, I'm extremely blessed.
Is there anyone in particular, fighter-wise, who you looked at when you were younger? And
do you know what? Growing up, it was more. After the first actual fight, I remember sitting down and watching was the HBO 24/7 they used to do of Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather, and then that was kind of, I saw the Razzmatazz boxing, and I thought, this is like, I could do something here, or I'd like to do something like this. And then I stayed up for Hatton versus Mayweather, and Ricky Hatton being a British phenomenon in boxing, it was someone who I thought, listen, if he can do it, why can't I?
That was huge, wasn't it? I remember that really well too. Just the whole build up, the shoulder programming, and it's funny because all of that stuff has really made a comeback across loads of different sports recently. Probably starting with Formula One, Drive to Survive, and we sort of started that. I think boxing kind of started
boxing
that, really getting into people's backstories and giving people a reason to actually pick a fighter and care about the person, because the stories are so good, aren't they? They're really relatable. It's very relatable sport character-wise.
Exactly that. And you've got to remember, not all people like the actual sport itself. They might see a certain story or something that's happened to an athlete, and they resonate more with that certain bit more than they do with the person itself. So it just gives the athletes, gives everyone an opportunity to connect on a much more deeper and meaningful level. But yeah, going back to what you said, we definitely did start it for sure.
And it is really important for young fighters to have someone who they look at and they feel like they're from a similar background. That guy, that female fighter, they look like me. They're from where I'm from. I know where you're from because I live really close. I live in East London. And there's a big Muslim community.
Massive.
And there will be lots of people looking at you, and they'll go to the gym because you're doing what you're doing. The positive influences, you cannot underestimate it.
No, not at all. And if we're talking in terms of just solely boxing here, I was someone who didn't win any national titles, someone who just had a normal amateur career, and now when I turned pro, I went about it the right way. I invested in myself. I took the right steps, and luckily I signed with a good promoter as well in Frank Warren. And I had the opportunities, and I've had loads of talks with young amateur fighters coming through now who get disheartened and whatnot. And I tell them, listen, use me as an example and proof to show that as long as you stay dedicated, as long as you keep knocking on that door, one day it'll definitely open.
Because people come through different routes, don't they? And people box for GB, which is fantastic, and it's tough. It's really tough. And they go to the Olympics, and you can turn pro with a fanfare and get a good deal, and they deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. But by no means do you have to do that. You look at the amount of fighters who didn't do that. They're more suited to professional boxing. They develop a bit later. So yeah, that I mean, again, it's good to have that example, isn't it? I think. Yeah,
no, for sure. And it kind of gives. It's like almost a breath of fresh air. It's normally you get so kind of, especially when you're in the amateurs. Oh, you must win titles. You got to fight for GP. You got to fight for England, etc. So so much pressure on it that once young fighters don't start hitting them targets, they start getting disheartened and they start kind of falling off. But like I said, keep knocking that door and it'll open.
There are many, many sacrifices though. And one really interesting thing you've done is go and base yourself for training in America.
Yeah.
I know a few fighters who've done it, and they all say the same thing, which is that it is hard. It is hard.
It is, yeah.
You took yourself away from home comforts, from a very involved and supportive extended family and community, to somewhere where you don't have any of that.
None of that.
So what prompted that?
Do you know what it was? The initial move was, I always knew that once I could financially get myself out there, I'd always do it. It was just a matter of when and how. And then I managed to make it happen. And once I got out there, I think it's coming up to 4 years now. You got to remember, once I got out there, I was someone who went from having family at the local gym, having uncles turn up, having cousins, etc. So with me in the gym, and I went from that in East London to LA wildcard gym to Tengoose boxing gym to being completely alone. And it was a very, very, very hard transition. And don't get me wrong, I took some beatings in sparring as well, but that's all part of the game. But I always had the long-term vision and goal. I knew that once I get there and I get my opportunity, obviously I had to make it happen. But once I get there, I know that I won't fumble and I'll make it happen. So the transition was very, very hard, especially missing. I can't remember the last time I was at home for a religious festival or a birthday or nothing like that. I've missed, I think, every single one for the last 4 years. But it's what it takes. It's what it takes in any sport. Any greats, if you ask them, it's all about doing what the average person is not willing to do.
Completely. I mean, I look at the lives that you all lead, and I'm not jealous of it. I'm not jealous of it at all. I mean, I've long been very aware that one of the main reasons I'm able to love boxing as much as I do is because I don't actually have to do it.
Yeah.
But what do you think it was that prompted you to fix on that from a way out, that was what you needed to do?
I think once it was watching all these fighters, one common pattern you'd see in all these great British fighters was they'd get to a level with a coach here in England, and then once they lost at a title level, then they'd make the transition to America. And I didn't want to be in that situation. I wanted to kind of do that all beforehand, so I have no excuses, or I know that I've got everything in my locker and my artillery to kind of be a great, and not having to have a setback in order to go out to America and have a new transition. So that was kind of what really made the difference for me. But then once I got out there myself, it was like, okay, yeah, this is the real deal. If I can hang with some of these fighters I'm sparring, hang with the work rate, hang with the bad days, then I'm good.
So just explain to people, because people will be watching this from all over the world, what makes American gyms that different? Because everybody says to me, UK fighters mainly, who I've spoken to, have done what you've done.
Yeah.
They just say it's just different.
Yeah, It is very, very different. And this is not to say there's not great trainers and great gyms in England, because there's plenty. But from my perspective and my view, going back to what you were saying, when you're new to America, and LA is kind of the hub of boxing, really, in terms of training. When I was there, new, fresh meat, every gym I'd walk into, I kid you not, they were lining up to spar me. And you hear these stories, but they were actually lining up to spar me. And the thing is over there, because I was so big for the weight, I'd walk into a gym and people would automatically think, yeah, he's a light heavyweight. So when I was at 154, I was sparring heavyweights who were probably light heavyweights who were probably walking around at 200 pounds plus. And this was a regular thing. And it was kind of, for the first 2 years, I really had to find my feet, because I'd make it happen, but I wasn't kind of stamping my authority. And then not until about 2 years ago, that's when the flip kind of switched. Like, listen, if I'm going to keep coming here, I need to like show them who the boss is.
Yeah, Andy Lee tells a really good story about turning up at the Kronk for the first time. Kind of walked through the door as that skinny, pale Irish fella, and Cornelius Bundridge in the ring looked at him and literally just screamed fresh meat.
Yeah.
That's how it was.
Yeah.
But it's, early days over there. There probably were times where you thought, have I done the right thing here?
I remember, listen, as soon as I was there for the first 3 weeks, I was questioning, like, listen, I was on my bed, I remember. I had a hard 3 weeks. And this was the first week after sparring. Come back in my room, I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really, really want to do this? And I swear to God, I was this close to booking a flight and going back home and thinking, leave it. Like, there's no need to put myself through all this. But then something just there was like a voice in my head that keeps saying, just keep going. And hopefully come February 22nd, that voice in my head back then would be the reason I won a world title.
What's it like away from the gym though, when you're away and in that situation too? Because Matt Macklin, who I work with a lot, he did it. He went over to America, and it was kind of pre-digital era, so it was slightly you're just a bit more isolated, I guess.
Yeah.
But he just said it was just the boredom and the loneliness of it outside of the ring, because you've got to live a really kind of selfish life, but that's lonely.
Yeah,
that must be lonely.
It's very, very, very lonely. And don't get me wrong. There are you get your good days where you go out with your gym mates, your coaches and whatnot. But ultimately, I'd say 90% of the time, if you're not in the gym, you're at home and you're alone. You're in your room, and you need to. What I find myself to doing is keep replaying certain situations that were happening in the gym, in sparring, in fights, and that burns you out. Because you're using mental energy, and plus you can really go into a deep hole. Even you start thinking about things that's not boxing related. So yeah, it is a very, very, very sensitive place to be, but it's been working for me.
Does with that kind of transition, to what extent does your faith help with that? Because that gives you a routine that goes with you wherever you go.
Exactly. And in training camp, it works perfectly because we base the first training session off the first prayer, which is just before sunrise.
I was going to say that's early.
Yeah, which is just very early, all depending on the time of the year, but more or less it's around 4:30 a.m. in the morning. So it works, and it helps. And not only does it work, it helps because, like, going back to what I was just saying about having them dark days, when you get on the prayer mat, and I'm not someone who just prays for the sake of praying. I understand what I'm praying and why I'm praying and what I'm praying for. So it's a lot more kind of deeper embedded in me, my faith, a lot more than it ever has been before.
Do you pray for a win? You say I'm not religious, you see, so I don't really know. Yeah. I haven't quite worked out what I think about it all. I'm hoping I get there at some point. But do you pray for a win? Do
you know what? In all honesty, I don't pray for a win because I feel like it might sound silly, but I feel like it's an unfair advantage. I feel like what I do pray for is that both fighters leave the ring safe and they go make their money, do what they have to do, put food on the plate for their families, and put on an entertaining fight for the fans. But I just don't know. Morally, I don't know. It don't feel right praying for a win. I don't know how to explain it, but to me, it doesn't feel right, and I never have done. To be fair,
no, that does make sense to me, and I was kind of going to ask you that actually, whether kind of if you'd said yes, I was going to gently probe and see if you felt that was really kind of ethical almost.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not at all. And I suppose when you see, but if you used to ask that question to most fighters, I think they'd say yeah. But listen, in all honesty, the answer is no, I don't. Because like we're just discussing morally and ethically, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right at all. And I think it's selfish as well. I think it's very selfish as well, especially the position I'm in now. I believe it. I've done my bit, but everything's come from God. So me asking him for another year, it don't sit right with me.
As regards what can happen in there, because it's a very serious thing you're doing and people get hurt, obviously, and you know, dreams get crushed, and that can be just as hard to take as any kind of physical injury. I've spoken to quite a lot of fighters who, to my surprise, I'm used to it now, but to my surprise, at elite level, are quite fatalistic about it. Their attitude is, I'll do what I do in the preparation. That's all I can really control. Then the bell will go, and whatever happens is what happens.
What happens, yeah. And I believe that's the kind of correct mentality to have. And you got to be realistic, right? Listen, you could get knocked out just by one punch. That's come down from the gods. You don't know. You could just, it is what it is. It's boxing, and I suppose it's almost what makes boxing great. But as a fighter, as an athlete, you kind of have to be real with yourself as well, and you got to realize these things can happen in the sport. And how that helps me is I realize that some of the people around me, some of the people who want to be involved, it's all fun and games when you're kind of undefeated and you're kind of on the rise and you're there, but who's really going to be there when you do take a loss or when you kind of got to rebuild your career again? So yeah, it helps me stay grounded and it helps me stay realistic as well.
Does it take a while to get there though? Did you go through a phase where you were kind of more of in the control freak camp, where you felt like you could control things that actually you realised after a while you couldn't?
It's the other way around. It's kind of the other way around. I never used to be like that. I never ever used to be like that. And now coming into this phase of my career, I've started to kind of take control of certain things, but not in a control freak kind of way, but in a way where I am happy with what's happening, and going into the ring, I'm a content and happy fighter.
So ambition-wise, a world title is what everybody wants. I mean, it's as with any dream, ambition, whatever it is, the chase can be long, the journey can be long. Yeah. And have you allowed yourself to think about what it might be like if you get there? Because I hear kind of varying reports about what it's like when you actually get to the top of the mountain. Do
you know what? I thought about it, definitely thought about it. And God willing, I'll make it happen. But then at the same time, this ain't a journey of just about winning world titles. It once was, yes, it definitely once was. But now I kind of realize the platform and power I have to change and empower other people and kind of help people in all aspects of their life. So me winning a world title, from a selfish perspective, yes, it's like, oh yeah, the best thing in the world. I've won a world title, I've won a dream. But then from a perspective where I'd like to be someone who's more than just boxing, there's a lot at stake, and there's a lot of lives that can be changed for sure.
How good are you at allowing yourself to enjoy wins, allowing yourself to enjoy success and celebrate? Because in the time that I've been covering sport, I think it's maybe moving back a little bit now, but there was definitely a period post 2000 where all you kept hearing was, you know, win and it's on to the next thing. You know, if you celebrate too much, it's because you didn't expect it to happen. And I expect it to happen. I expect it to win. You know, celebrating wins is for losers kind of thing. And I just thought, again, I said earlier, I'm not jealous of you lads, and I'm not, but I just thought, God, that's a joyless way to live. Yeah, it is.
And listen, it's easy for me because when I enjoy my wins, all I do is I'll be sitting on the beach and just sunbathing. That is it. And there is nothing more extravagant I do more than that after a win. And maybe for other fighters it's different, but for me, I do make sure that because I've isolated myself from family and friends and whatever you have it for 12 to 13 weeks, I always make sure that I give time back, and I do enjoy myself. But then at the same time, I do stay fit, I stay in shape, I stay active. But that doesn't mean I'm sparring or I'm getting my head banged 24/7. It's more just to kind of maintain myself from a healthy lifestyle perspective.
And just finally, it is kind of interesting, and I'm sure it's not lost on you that you moved thousands of miles west to base yourself in the best possible place to pursue your career. During that period, the focus of the sport, the hub of the sport, has moved thousands of miles east.
Yeah, the other way.
It's amazing how things can change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and never did I think that it'd be based here, in all honesty, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I would not have it any other way. His Excellency, what he's done with the sport, the opportunities he's given myself and other fighters, and not just fighters, but listen, from all aspects, in terms of media, in terms of you name it, fans. He's done incredible things for the sport, and yeah, long may it continue.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Hamzah Sheeraz, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you very much.